Hi everyone, welcome to the Empower Sounds podcast. My name is Mahika, and this podcast is all about sharing the inspiring stories of women from all walks of life, uncovering the mindsets and missions and their journeys. This episode is super interesting because I'm speaking with Aspen Bollinger all about what life is like as a digital nomad. So, if you've ever thought about working from your computer anywhere in the world, having flexibility, traveling whilst working, this episode is for you. I hope you enjoy. Let me know what you think. Please rate and review the show. Amazing. Aspen, welcome to the podcast. Can you please start by introducing yourself and telling us where you're based and why you decided to move to Madrid?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. My name is Aspen Bollinger. I am a graphic designer, but I guess I'm falling more on the digital nomad side since I've been working remotely. So yeah, I decided to come to Madrid, which is where I'm based now. I am from Pennsylvania, all East Coast. So I started in Pennsylvania. I went to school in New Jersey, and then I moved to Boston for a year. And then I just came here in July. So it's been about 4 months that I've been in Madrid.
And can you please tell us a bit more about how these 4 months have been for you? What have been the highlights? How have you found it? And how you've just found assimilating and living in this new place?
Yeah, definitely. So it was super nerve-wracking. So I came solo. I came alone. I didn't know anybody here, and um, I kind of knew that was going to be a barrier, right? Like you're making new friends, and like once you're out of college, I feel like it's harder to make friends. Like it's not at your fingertips as much as it is when you're in school and you have classes with people. So I wasn't quite sure how that was going to go. But I decided to move into an apartment that had roommates because I figured that was, some automatic built-in friends, like to at least explore the city with. So um yeah, actually getting accustomed to the city and being like quote unquote alone here was it came a lot easier than I thought it would, just because I met friends. So a lot of that was through Facebook groups and um, roommates and roommates' friends and friends of friends. So I feel like I kind of built my circle pretty quickly. I anticipated it taking like my first month. I kind of figured my first month I'd be a solo. But really my second week I had a small little group. So that was a lot. It came a lot easier than I thought it would. But I guess that being said, like you have to put yourself out there as well. So it's not get knocked on my door. I kind of just inserted myself into some of those scenarios that were nerve-wracking. And that was part of me moving here is putting myself out there. So um yeah, so that was the social part of it. And then work wise, so like I said, I'm from the East Coast, but the company that I'm working for is based in Seattle on the West Coast. So I I'm a freelance graphic designer for myself, kind of my side job. And then my full-time job, or so I say that I call it my full-time job, like my big girl job, is is based on the West Coast, and that is in marketing, really. So um those hours, I'm kind of flexible here. So I don't work, East or West Coast hours. I kind of just work the regular hours here, and they allow me to self-manage, which I'm super thankful for.
That's really cool. I feel like there's so much to unpack here. I think let's start with the making friends side, and then we're
Okay,
going to move on to the professional side.
sure.
So, you talked about how you put yourself out there. Now, I got to experience this firsthand because when we met, we went on a trip, and you and I were the ones who went alone. And you came up to me at 7 o'clock in the morning and you asked me if I was alone and if I wanted a bus buddy. And I thought that was really sweet. And I was really, really grateful. And look at us now, we're recording a podcast on my
Right.
friends. But for some people, that doesn't come naturally. And going up to new people is really intimidating, like not knowing what to say, not wanting to come across as like weird or like having them reservations. Do you have any advice for people who are a little bit more reserved or just shy or like not even shy or reserved, just a bit like anxious about going and speaking to people they don't know?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's funny because I think people see, well, like me, for example, and like, oh, you're super extroverted, like it's easy to put yourself out there. And part of that, I mean, yes, I would consider myself mostly an extrovert, but it- you know, I don't really know if it's ever easy for anybody. Maybe there's a select few out there that find it super easy. But it's kind of always it's still uncomfortable for me. Like I showed up to that trip, and I kind of knew going in, I was like, I need to be in the mindset of like just meeting people. Um, and talking to anybody. So, and if that's uncomfortable for a little bit, then fine. But I didn't want to, not talk to anybody on that whole weekend trip. So, um, yeah, I think kind of the mindset that I put myself in is, well, that is exactly that. Like going in knowing that it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable, and that's okay, only for the first few seconds, and then you start chatting and it's fine. But I think too, remembering that most people are probably in the same boat as you are. Like, for example, I just could tell that you probably were there by yourself. And I was like, well, I'm sure you don't want to be here by yourself. Like, I'm sure you also don't have the mindset of like, I'm on this group trip. I want to make no friends, right? Like, I'm sure you share the similar mindset of like wanting to talk to some people and, um, make friends while you're there and be social. So, I think if you are able to kind of seek those people out wherever you are and kind of be able to read, similar people that are in that similar situation, you're probably going to bond to an extent right off the bat. Um, and yeah, go and yeah, I mean, have conversations from there. But yeah, I do think it's a kind of a common misconception that I think a lot of people are like, oh, it must be super easy when it's not. It's just, I moved here for the challenge of putting myself out there, um, and getting comfortable with the discomfort, I guess you could say. So, um, yeah, I'm trying to embrace that.
And has it been hard just being surrounded by people, like lots of new friends? Because I have this one friend who also moved abroad, and she said that she struggled because like she's lived in the same place her whole life, and she had this group of friends that she's known for like 20 years, and like now it's like all of the people in your immediate surroundings, people you've just met, and like it's sometimes a bit harder to have that deeper relationship with them, the ones where you've like known each other for years and you feel like super comfortable to be your most vulnerable, authentic self. Like, have you found it easier to really have those like authentic, good connections? And if so, like, do you have any like tips on like how you can kind of improve the interaction so it's not just a superficial kind of conversation?
Yeah. So I guess I'm not quite the best person to answer that based off your example, only because I think because I moved a bit before I came to Madrid, like I left home, which is Pennsylvania, went to school in Jersey. Obviously, you're making your friends in college, of course. But then from there I moved up to Boston. Um, and I had to make all new friends up there. I moved there by myself. I didn't know anybody. And so that was kind of my first try, or my first like, or my first experience post college of remaking a whole new friend group. Um, so it was hard to leave them all when I came here, but I think that having that experience was definitely something that I was able to build on coming here. I kind of knew like going to Boston was scary because that was my first time kind of, when you're in college, yes, you're away from home, but you're still kind of seeing your family, or at least I was in my case because I was close enough to home. But I would see them sometimes, and you're still in that like neck of the woods. But um, yeah, Boston was my first time that I felt like definitely I'm here by myself. I know nobody. I need to make friends. Um, and again, post college, so everyone's kind of out of that group. Um, but yeah, so then when I came to Madrid, I kind of knew what to expect. Like I knew I'd put myself out there. I knew that, I might have time by myself. And I think that also is something that's scary is you need to kind of prep yourself for a period of isolation, whether it happens or not. Unfortunately, or fortunately here, it didn't really happen. But in Boston for a bit, it kind of did. Like, I mean, I had made friends rather quickly there as well. And I think, again, that's because I was seeking it out. I didn't really wait for it to come. I was like intentionally putting myself out there in these positions to meet people. But I think it's such a mindset thing. Like, you kind of need to go in um being prepared for like an isolating period, just to be by yourself, be with yourself, be comfortable being alone, being comfortable being with your thoughts. And I think that in itself is scary. And it took me time to be okay with that. And, anxiety comes with that, and overthinking. And you can easily get in your head. I think asking anyone who's moved to a new city alone is, they're going to say, yeah, of course, there's times that you're lonely. And, that kind of comes with the package, right? But yeah, I think luckily Boston was kind of like my like segue into moving here. I didn't know that at the time, but looking back, that was kind of like I was in the States still, so it was like a version of comfortable, but still a new city. And then here, new everything, new language, new city, new people, new culture. So I was eased in a bit, but nonetheless, still making new friends. But um, you also had mentioned um, kind of getting deeper and not so surface level with friendships. So I think that's something I'm still kind of learning, because it's been 4 months, but it's only been 4 months. So you can only progress into friendships so much so fast. So you have to build trust and obviously establish your relationship. So I think I do have some friends here that I feel I'm rather close with, and we have had some deeper conversations. Um, and I've had some other friends that I've known for just as long that we just haven't reached that level. And I think um, that kind of comes down to the person. Some people are willing to get deeper than others quicker. I am that person. um, I have no problem kind of like getting into the weeds quickly if a conversation goes there. Like I feel like you and I had some conversations that were not so surfaceable um rather quickly because we are talkers and like to get into it. And you have some people that just are more closed off, so I think it's just kind of personality traits.
Yeah, I get that. I think it's just trial and error. Going back to what you said about embracing the loneliness, what do you think is, and if you don't have an answer to this, it's okay, but do you think that there's anything that you learned about yourself in that time of loneliness that you didn't before? And if so, do you feel comfortable to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So right off the top of my head, the first thing that came to mind was the fact that I realized I love to travel alone. I never would have said that in the past. I've always thought to myself, oh, I would never travel alone. I'm so social. I love having friends. Like, I would get so lonely. And yes, there comes times, there have come times where I'm like, okay, it's a weekend. I would love to have somebody to go out with right now. And I just don't. Um, but for the most part, I've just really learned that I really like my own company, and I like doing things by myself, and I like exploring by myself. Um, and yeah, I mean, equally, I love traveling with friends. Of course, I don't. It's not like I'm picking one or the other, but I just I didn't necessarily realize that exploring places by myself and taking myself out on dates, which is so everyone's saying that nowadays because like social media, everyone's like, take yourself out for coffee. And like, it's kind of become this like maybe, I don't know, trend or like hot topic to like take yourself out. But um that's something that I had not really done before. But then when you're placed in the position to either do that or sit at home, you're like, oh, I guess I'm going out. Um, so yeah, I think when you're put in those kind of positions, you're gonna do the things.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And I wanted to ask you again about like the cultural aspect of it, because you talked about how Boston was kind of your easing into living alone, living in a new place. now we both live in Madrid. It's very different culturally to where you're from in the States, as well as the language, which we'll come to in a second as well. But like, have you managed to make friends with like local people? Have you found the cultural differences has impacted your friendships? Like, do you feel assimilated into like the Madrid scene? How has that side been?
Yeah, so I actually have not made many local friends. Most of the friends that I have here are other, like I guess I would just say expats. I don't know if that's the right word. I might be using that wrong, but just people that are not from here. So whether that's, well, obviously you're not from here, you're not from the States. I have some friends here that are from the States. Um, but everyone else is kind of spread out. Like I have a few friends from South America, Austria, Germany, Greece. I made some friends from Greece. So everyone's kind of been spread out. And I think when you come here, there's something very comforting about meeting people that are also not from here. And while I would love to have more local friends that are from Spain or just from Madrid, um, there's something super comforting to knowing that you're all out of your comfort zone. You're all not in your home country. Um, and that's just something to have in common. I think that's something right off the bat that you have in common with them, and kind of something to bond over. So whether that's like missing friends, missing family, just experiencing the different culture together, um, that's it's just comforting to share those feelings.
Yeah, for sure. And have you found the language barrier to hinder like your connections with making friends with locals and everything? What has been your journey with learning Spanish? And can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Sure, yeah. So I'll start back. So I had taken Spanish all through high school, and I took it up to AP, which is if that's like a college level course you can take in high school. And then I had passed the AP test, and I brought some credits into college. So I minored in Spanish in college. Um, I should have mentioned in between there, in between college and high school. Oh, I'm sorry, in between high school and college, I had taken a trip to Spain with my Spanish class, which was like an educational trip, if you will. But it was fun, but we had to speak Spanish the whole time. Um, but yeah, and then after college, I never really used Spanish because it wasn't like I didn't have friends who spoke Spanish. It wasn't in my workplace. So it was kind of just there, and I wanted to use it. I didn't know how to use it. Anyway, so I decided to come here. I, did the typical Duolingo leading up and all, watched my Netflix in Spanish, all the things. Um, but as far as making friends here, again, because I haven't really made a ton of friends with locals, um, it hasn't really affected my friendships here, I would say. Obviously, you have the barrier. I think moving to a new country in general is intimidating, but then when you aren't fluent in that language, that's doubly intimidating. So um that was definitely something I was nervous about coming here, but um I also know I underestimate myself, and I was a lot more nervous than I probably needed to be. That being said, I have a lot of room to improve, but I think I navigate just fine. But yeah, I don't think it's really, it didn't really have an effect on my friendships that I've made. Um, everyone speaks English for the most part, and I think that's because a lot of us have different native languages, so we all kind of understand English. Um, and if that doesn't work, we'll kind of do like a Spanglish combination, and someone's bound to know one of them, English or Spanish. Um, yeah, does that answer your question? I might have.
It does. It does. It does. And also, I wanted to ask you because I think for me personally, I study like my situation's a bit different. I study in Spain, and so I interact with locals a lot more. And so from the social aspect, I feel like that I don't struggle with. But what I find extremely intimidating, nerve-wracking, soul-draining is administration in Spanish. Because like you said, moving to a new country is a lot. Moving to a new country where having to do extremely mundane things like get your floor fixed or get a key copied or get a fax photocopied in a different language and like figuring out like where to do it, or like simple things like for example, in the UK, getting like over-the-counter pain prescription, you can buy it in the supermarket, but here you have to go to a pharmacy and you have to ask for it and da da da. Like all of those little kind of admin adjustability kind of things of like settling into your new life. How have you found navigating that in general and then also navigating that in a new language?
I think it's, yeah, it's kind of twofold because a lot of it is so different than the States. Like exactly what you just said, the admin kind of tasks are so different. Um, Even things like ordering from Amazon is a lot different here. I mean, I shouldn't say a lot. It's a little bit different. And returning packages, I actually haven't had to return anything yet. I haven't ordered a lot either. I've ordered like one or two things, but um, I don't even know how I would go about returning. I'm sure there's a simple way of doing that, but I just haven't done it yet. Um, but yeah, I mean, figuring out how to do the things hasn't really been much of a task or a trial. But the language barrier has been a struggle sometimes because even if you're conversational, there's some of those words that you're like, I have no idea. Like, I have no idea what this medication is called in Spanish or and so the times that I've been to the pharmacy, I really just kind of explain my way around. Um, However, actually this past week I had went to the pharmacy for something and I I could not explain my way around. And so I had to just look it up and show her my phone. Because it was very specific. But um, in those cases, I have my phone and I have Google Translate and I have word reference to use. But um, yeah, I mean, for the most part, I do try to explain my way around things opposed to Googling it or looking it up because I think it's probably good for me, even though I hate it. And I get so embarrassed and I get so nervous, just being totally honest. I get so nervous. And I think anyone who is learning that second language will have the feeling of going somewhere or going to ask something like with the sentence in your head. You're like, here it is. This is the sentence. I'm going to walk up, I'm going to say it. And you get to the person and you're like, oh my gosh, I have no idea. The thought that was in my head, like, no way, it's gone. So you kind of just, you, for me, like I'll get a little embarrassed and it's like, okay, well, I did it either way. The words came out. I said the things, I got what I needed. Like the task is completed. It's just, and next time it'll be a little bit easier. um, but yeah, it's a struggle, but nothing you can't overcome, right?
For sure. I think one of my main takeaways from this whole like living abroad is initially like I found learning how to do some of the tasks more like overwhelming, but the feeling of getting it done is like it's such a confidence boost because little
Yes.
by little you have the faith that like I can do it, I can navigate it, I can figure out how to do these challenges. And I think that that's like such a powerful thing of like moving out of your comfort zone, literally, physically to a completely
Yes.
different location. So I think that transitions perfectly onto my next questions, which is to do with your work and like the whole flexibility and the digital like nomad side of it. So can you please tell us a little bit more about your work and what like a day-to-day working day looks like for you?
Yeah, definitely. So, um, my again, kind of how I mentioned before, I'm not on a strict at like 9 to 5, if you will. Like I'm not on like a strict hour schedule. Um, but I tend to work hour wise about 11 a.m. till like 7-ish. Because my team in Seattle, we don't have calls every day, but when we do, they tend to be about 4 p.m. to 7 my time. That's, in there. The calls will overlap in those hours somewhere. So again, that's like, what is that for them? It's like their 8 a.m. and my 5 or something like that. It's a 9-hour time difference, but and so, yeah, so I'm a morning person usually, so I get up pretty early, and I'm a gym workout person as well. So I get that done in the morning. I'll run like my errands in the morning if I need to grab groceries and things. And then I usually work from home. I do sometimes go to cafes to work just to kind of get out of the house. I found some nice digital nomad computer friendly cafes around Madasania, but they're around. There's not a ton of them, but they're around. Some, will say, okay, like certain days of the week you can have your computer, some days you can't, which is interesting. But anyway, getting out of the house sometimes and putting on cute clothes is good. um, yeah, so the normal day, it's it's pretty chill, it's pretty nice. And again, working from anywhere is really convenient. So I've had days where, I would take trips like to Barcelona for the weekend, but like I only would take the train on a Wednesday. So I'll work from Barcelona from Wednesday and Thursday and take off Friday, and like things like that is really convenient. Sometimes my work knows, sometimes they don't, just because they don't need to, I'm getting my work done. I'm still on my same hours. And they know that, they're very flexible. And I'm super thankful that they're allowing me to do this. Um, some backstory on that, actually, I think part of the reason why they feel so comfortable is because I had freelanced with them for about 5 years or so prior to coming on full time. So I was very intermediate freelancing. So it was kind of an as needed. They'd reach out when they need work. I'd give it back shortly afterwards. So, they know that I've been reliable. And then I only started working for them full time. What was that? This past February. And I shortly said, after I started with them, I shortly said, I would love to move abroad. It just came to me. If that's something, you're comfortable with, that'd be amazing. But if not, I totally understand. It was kind of spur of the moment for me as well. It wasn't something that I had planned long before I started. So it was, it was a new idea to me, just as it was to them. And they were like, yeah, it's a great opportunity. We'd love for you to be able to do that. We don't see why we can't try it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But, we're never going to know till you try. So you might as well, we'll see. We'll see if it works. And they were kind of willing to work with me, and vice versa. So yeah, here we are. And it's been going just fine. To my surprise, honestly, I figured it would go well, but my job role has shifted a bit since I was a little more client facing, and now I'm a little more, working in the back end, because I can't quite, I'm not having as many meetings with clients given the time zone. So yeah, with the combination of my work hours being a little more flexible, and them allowing my job role to be a bit more flexible, it's worked out. It's worked out for both of us. But yeah, that probably sums up work pretty well. And then freelance wise, I still maintain a handful of clients back home. Since I have started with my current company full time, I'm freelancing a little bit less. In the future, I would love to switch over to being a full-time designer for myself, for full-time freelancing. But as of now, the job that I have full-time, my big girl job is, it's stable, right? And that's kind of where I'm wanting. It's kind of what I'm wanting right now. Flexible hours, but stable income is kind of what I'm needing for this time in my life. And that changes next year. It changes, but it's kind of working. It's working how I need it to work at the moment, and I'm kind of taking advantage of that.
That's so cool. And I feel like there's so much that we can unpack here from everything you've shared. Thank you for sharing. My first question is, it's really awesome that you just like went to your employers, and I understand that you said you've established this many years of like rapport and like trust with the company, but can you give like, I feel like this is something that a lot of people would want to do, and ask for that freedom of flexibility, even if it's not moving to a different country, but like working from home or having a hybrid situation, or basically making their job fit their life and their needs more, but not knowing really how to like speak to their employer about it. So do you have any tips on how you had that conversation, how you had that conversation effectively enough that it resulted in an outcome that was favorable to you? And do you have any advice on that?
Sure. That's yeah, it's a bit daunting, Um, especially for me in this case because I had approached them. At the time I was looking for work and I had approached them and I said, "Hey, I'm kind of in the market for either more freelance work or a full-time role. If you have anything open or you know of anybody, send it my way." Um, and they had gotten back to me and were like, "Yeah, we actually have a bit of a hodgepodge, like design, marketing, a little bit of salesy role that we need filled right now. Um, if you're willing to step into something like that and be trained, we'd love to have you." So I should also mention that we are a very small team, like 10 and under, or I should say, yeah, about 10. Um, and while we are not technically a startup, we've been up for about 5 or so years, but our team is small. Um, so that's, you have pros and cons there. So pros, communication goes easily. So you're not communicating with the big team. It's just the handful of us. So you know who's doing what at all times. The con, you know who's doing what at all times. So that's kind of it's two-sided. But I don't want to get too far off track. So back to the communication thing with the employers. So I kind of what it just boiled down to was I realized I didn't want to stay in Boston any longer past my lease, which was going to end in July. So in February, I made this decision that I wanted to move. This was the right time. I'm post college. I didn't know what I was going to do for work yet, but it was just like, if I want to move abroad, this is probably the time to do it. I'm not to look too far into the future here, but like I'm not settled down. I don't have kids. I don't have a house. I'm renting. Just as far as those kind of items, I don't know when I'm going to be able to do this again, move abroad. So this could be my only time, right? So yeah, I was in communication with my work and they were like, "Yeah, we'll take you on, this is great." And I was like, "Woo, okay, I secured this, I secured this full-time job." And then I was like, "You know what? Actually, what if I move across, the world?" And it was unfortunate because I didn't want to lose that job. But I also knew that I also didn't want to sacrifice my future. So it was either I pitch this idea to them and they say, "Yeah, yeah, we love this. This is great. We're willing to work with you. Pursue your dream. We're here for it." Or they say, "Yeah, that's really unfortunate. We need somebody in the States, and I figure something else out." And I I was just kind of had to be okay with that. I chose, pursuing this dream over work, which I knew even if it took me some time off, I had calculated my financial means into that. And I knew that if I didn't find a job for a few months, I was okay, So that obviously is something that needs to be factored in at all times. Was I able to support myself just from savings for rent for the next 6 months or whatever that was, 6 or 8 months, whatever I had factored in? And the answer was yes. So I was like, this is, I'm gonna risk not having a job for a bit to try to pursue this dream that I have. And yeah, I reached out and fortunately it went exactly how I wanted it to go. And they were like, "Yeah, we would love for you to pursue this dream. This is something that we would want for our daughter." It was like really sweet. Um, and yeah, it ended up working out. And I think luckily I was able to have about 6 months of work under my belt in the States for them in a better time zone before I moved here. But yeah, I think the best way of putting it is, um, if you want something bad enough, you kind of have to do what's necessary to make it happen. And I say that lightly because obviously not everybody has the financial means to do so. Um, and there's a time and a place for everything, but if you want something bad enough, you have to try. Yeah, I hate this. Like, you have to see it through. That's, I don't know any other phrase besides you have to see it through. You have to try, and the worst thing is you come up short, and then maybe it's not the right time. Maybe you're not supposed to be taking the risk at that time. Maybe you're supposed to be, you know, being comfortable. Maybe you're supposed to be comfortable for another year. So have more time under your belt, secure financially, secure those means a bit, and then make the jump. But yeah, I would say there's no harm in asking for the most of the time. The worst thing they're going to say is no, and you either find a job elsewhere or you stick it out with them longer until you're able to find another job that will support your dream. Um, that was a bit wordy, but hopefully that answered the question.
No, that was amazing. Thank you for that. I also wanted to ask you, you keep referring to your big girl job and then
Yeah.
your other role. So can you please tell us a bit more about your quote unquote side hustle, why you
Yeah.
chose to start it, how you started it, what it is? Like, tell us all about it.
Yeah. So I shouldn't really say it. I really only see my big girl job because to me it's like that's a steady income flow at this time. And while it's not really corporate, it's not corporate, already, again, the team is really tiny, but um it's a version of corporate, right? I'm not working for myself. So in my mind, it's a version of corporate. Um, but yeah, so my personal business, it's called Aspen Designs, and I started freelancing in 2018 when I started college. So I graduated high school, went to college. I've been working since I was about 15 or 16. And my those were jobs in high school that were your typical like barista, waitress, cafe worker kind of things. Um, but I fell in love with graphic design with with through one high school class I had taken. Um, and I've always been creative, but everyone kind of said to me like, "Oh, you're not going to make money as an artist. You can't do that. Like, how are you going to support yourself?" The typical like dream squashers. And that was kind of a concern of mine because everyone put it in my head, that you can't make money as an artist. And then I had that graphic design class in high school, and I was like, well, this could be an avenue I could take. It's digital, in the digital world moving forward, as everyone says. So, I was like, this is a way for me to express my creativity and be creative and kind of pursue that aspect of my, of my dreams, and also have a shot at making money and making this a career. So, I moved to, or I graduated high school and I was moving to college. And I was like, well, I need a job because I've been supporting myself since I graduated high school. So I was like, I need a form of income. However, I was a full-time student, also like in the honor school at my school. So, additional work on top of that. I was in a lot of clubs. I was involved. I didn't want to not partake in the classes and clubs that I wanted because I had to work. But I also knew that I needed money. So my brother, who's about 2 years older than me, uh, he's very tech savvy, and he's been like, he's a software engineer, but he's been coding actually since he was a kid. He's crazy in the best way. He's just always known what he wants to do, and has been like working on computers since he was like 7. Anyway, so he had freelance when he was a lot younger, like way young, like 12. And he said to me, you should start freelancing. And I was like, well, I don't know what I'm doing. I like, yeah, I like graphic design, but I have no idea how to do it. I took one class, and he was like, yeah, it's fine. Like, just get into it, learn as you go, fake till you make it. He's like, I was like 15 or like 13 in my room coding and making websites for these people. And I sounded like a child, but they didn't know that. They didn't, they don't know that. So, um, and I would pretend to know what I was doing until I learned. And I was like, okay, sure, I'll try it. So that's what I did. I started on a site called Upwork. Um, Unfortunately, it's a little scammy now. It was a lot better a few years ago. I still use it, but it's not as good as it used to be. But if you've heard of Fiverr, it's similar to Fiverr. It's just a platform for freelancers of all types. Um, you can write essays on there. You can hire yourself out for trades work like welding and things. Like it's very lots of resources on there. But I put a profile up, and I started my hourly rate at like $8 an hour because you have to start low. You don't have reviews, you don't have credibility, so you need to start low and build up from there. And Upwork takes a percent of your earnings because they're providing you with clients, or I should say, they're providing you with a platform to find clients. And so I I built it up from there. So 2018, I had my first client. Um, Not all of them were great. I only really had one issue with the client before I um, had downloaded a desktop tracking app, which would track my movement of my mouse. And also that was kind of a protection service from Upwork. But before I had that, I had somebody rebuke all my hours, and I didn't have proof at the time of my work, so I had to refund him. But other than that, I've only really had good experiences, and now I'm at about 55 an hour. Um, so it's been some time. I haven't really, touched that rate for the past 2 years or so, which I probably could increase, but um, regardless, I did start rather low to build, my reviews and client base and credibility. Um, but I 100% faked it till I made it till I made it. So, I was like, sure, I can do X, Y, and Z. Absolutely. Meanwhile, on the back, I'm like YouTubing how to do this, how to, how to navigate Adobe programs, and how to make GIFs through Photoshop and things like that. So I think while I ended up minoring in graphic design in college, I would say 90% of what I know now was just self-taught. Um, and I'm proud of that. So yeah, the clients I have now, um, some are from like maybe 2018, 2019. Some are newer, but yeah, freelancing did allow me to work just as I wanted through college, provided me with a decent income. I was flexible with my hours, working whenever I wanted. If working in between classes, before class, after class, I would have client meetings in between classes at my apartment. I mean, if I wanted, I would, there, I did have some times where I would work like in class on my computer, like if um, you're in class and it's a lecture and it's not applicable necessarily, and you want to like work a few hours, why wouldn't I do that? Right? It's at my fingertips. Not saying that's a wise choice. That was just a choice that I had made sometimes if I needed to meet some deadlines. But yeah, so I think it was, when you're passionate about it, you're passionate about your work, it makes it easier too.
That's really cool. And I really like how you talk about your passion and like really building it up and building up your skills and believing in yourself. And the anecdote about your brother is really sweet. It sounds like you have a really good support network. And I want to come back to family and homesickness. But before I do, we talked about all of the benefits about flexibility. But I feel like you mentioned, flexibility makes life easier, but it also sometimes can create burnout because you can do so many things and there's like no limit to how much you can work. You can work online, you can keep working, you can work your own hours. So how do you ensure that you don't burn out, that you have like some sort of routine and structure, and that it's not just like all over the place?
That is such a good question. Um, yeah, where do I start? So it's so real. It's the fact living in this, like, I mean, anyone will tell you in the digital world that we're in, but that's so true. In the digital world that we're in, being able to work all the time is super convenient, sure, but also absolutely draining. It can be. So, I mean, even now, like pushing freelance aside for a second, my current job, I know like I tend to stop working at 7:30, but there's times where like, I have Slack on my phone, and if I have a message that's coming in at 9:30 from my team, like I'm gonna see it. Could I mute that? Yes, but there's also that sense of like guilt that's kind of like, well, they're allowing me to be here. Like, should I be on the clock at like late hours? It's just it's such an internal battle. But again, you kind of need to establish boundaries for yourself so that you don't get burnout. And I don't necessarily feel that I have experienced burnout yet. Um, I think I do a pretty good job at maintaining time for myself, but it's it's so easy to never clock out mentally, even if you're away from your computer, it's like I know that I have access to all my files, all my work, like 3 steps away. So being able to mentally clock out um, was something I had to learn. However, throughout college, working as, freelancing, I didn't really clock out. Um, Obviously on the weekends I would sometimes, but I also was very dedicated to keeping and growing and maintaining my client base, kind of at whatever means necessary to an extent. So, there were times where I like wouldn't go out on the weekends, or I just knew that I had to stay in all day Saturday to get work done. And I think that's probably speaks to, not to toot my own horn, but like to my drive. I've always been quite driven, um, and, work oriented, and proactive. I'm not a procrastinator by any means. So I'm rather organized as well. Not to just go off this tangent on myself, but I think those are factors that need to happen if you choose to work remotely, because no one's really holding you accountable. No one's like, sitting next to you being like, hey, did you get this done? Like, make sure you get X, Y, and Z off your list today. Like no one's doing that really. Even my work now, I'm 100% self-managing. So I think learning as soon as you can to self-manage, um, and push yourself when needed, and know when to take breaks and know when to not take breaks. And, it's it's something that needs to be learned. Um, and I'm not saying, I wasn't born like that, but my parents kind of distilled that in me from a younger age. But I think also wanting to have the lifestyle that I have now and wanting to work remote and wanting to pick my own hours kind of forced me into that mindset. It's like, okay, if you want that life, you need to do X, Y, and Z now. If you want to have the life of working remotely, picking your own hours, working for yourself, you need to be motivated. You need to learn how to, um, you know, pick and choose like when you're working. And if that means, for 4 years of college, like not going out sometimes and establishing that client base early, like to have the comfort, like the clients that I have now, the business I have now, that's what needed to happen. So I think I was kind of able to foresee what I wanted and adjust my life accordingly then. Um, yeah, but the burnout question, everyone has a different, or everyone's ability to take on work, everyone's workload capacity, I should say, everyone's capacity, it's a better word, is very different. Some people can sit at a desk for 10 hours or 5 hours, I should say 5 hours, and not need a break, right? I can't do that. But I'm more of a take a break every two or 3 hours kind of person. Um, but again, that varies day to day. So it's different for everybody. I think it just boils down to trial and error and figuring out what works for you.
That's really interesting. And I really liked what you said. Like, first, let's go back because you were saying all these amazing qualities about yourself. And then you said, not to toot my own horn. And then you talked about being a manager. And I feel like with managers, like in the workplace, their job is to discipline and to provide structure, but they also praise. Like you have the, what's it called, a progress report in your job. Like you get told what you're doing well and what you're doing, like what you could do better. And I think it's so important that you've identified that it's important to stay motivated, disciplined, structured. But it's also so good that you can identify these good qualities in yourself as an individual and also as like an employee and a worker, because why else would you do it? Like what, like if you didn't,
Right.
if you didn't think you were good at it, why else would you do it?
Right.
Moving on. I think it's so nice we've spoken at length about this amazing life that you've created for yourself here. And I can personally attest to this. I feel like living in Madrid is a dream and I love it, but I really do miss home and I miss my family. And I also can recognize that just because you've created a wonderful life somewhere doesn't mean that you didn't leave a wonderful life before. And so what has been your experience with moving away and kind of not leaving behind, but kind of being away from your friends, your family, your home, um, and not just like one place, but you've moved around the States, so all of those places.
Yeah. Um, it's homesickness is a real thing. I will say my family and I are very close. So, I probably talk to my mom just about every day. Um, and my parents have always kind of pushed my brother and I to move where you want, do what you want. Like, and my mom would say, like, and your dad and I will like meet you. We'll meet you halfway, we'll meet you there, we'll meet you where you are, because we can always move around. And I'm super thankful that they, have pushed us to do just that. But and my family's actually coming here for Thanksgiving. They tend to, like, my brother's first time, he moved to California first when he was 18, and then now he's in Seattle. Um, just like my job. But we flew out to them. We flew out to him for Thanksgiving, his first time he moved to California, which was really sweet of my parents. But um, yeah, so the homesickness is it's very real. And at first, it's not necessarily like, for me at least, that I miss exactly home. It's more just that you miss familiarity. It's the fact that, like, I miss knowing every single place about home. I miss, like, you know, just it's familiar, and that's what it is. Like, I think the States in general right now would feel familiar to me. Going anywhere in the States would feel familiar to me. Um, but yeah, I know leaving Boston, I left a lot of friends in Boston. I think I had more friends in Boston than I did in college. In college, it was really just like me, my best friend, maybe two other girls, but we were a small group. I wasn't a part of Greek life. I wasn't, a part of a sports team. I was in some clubs like student government and like the student activities board, where we would like plan events on campus and things, but it wasn't as much of a friend group, if you will, as Greek life is. Um, so, needless to say, my friend group in college was rather small, but Boston, I made some really, really good lifelong friends, I would say. Um, and I really do miss them. And that was, I think Boston feels like more of a home base to me than Jersey does, even though I was there for 4 years. Um, so yeah, but I think, I do stay in touch with these friends. I actually was FaceTiming one of them yesterday for a bit. We haven't talked probably in like 2 months. And that's just kind of the reality of it. When you when well, the time difference is one of those factors. But I think whenever you leave a friend that you're in close proximity with, as much as you want to stay in touch and you can stay in touch, it's hard, and it requires effort on both sides. And even when there is effort on both sides, things come up and, you get sick or you get busy and work's in the way. And, you're making new friends and you have to make room for that as well. But I think a lot of people use the phrase like you're leaving that life behind. And I don't really feel like that. Um, I also don't really feel like being in Madrid is a new life for me. It kind of just feels like it's a part of it to me. I don't and maybe that's because I don't see myself here forever, you know. It's kind of like, well, this is something I wanted to do. I don't know how long I'll be here. I don't know where I'll go next, but I don't really feel like I have these separate lives. I kind of just feel like this is like part of my paper trail. You know, it's like part of my journey. Just super cliche now that I just said that. But that's kind of how it feels. Like I would love to go back to Boston to visit, you know. Um and it's still gonna feel familiar and I'm still gonna miss it. And I'm gonna miss here one day too. Wherever I go next, I'm sure I'm gonna miss Madrid and all my friends here. Um, but yeah, I don't really feel like it's these separate lives. It's kind of just me, you know, exploring different places in the world and growing and evolving. And um, I will say though that I do feel like the Aspen that was in Boston is different than the Aspen here and different than the Aspen in Jersey. And, you know, just because I'm growing and you know, learning more and experiencing more and um, you know, getting out of my comfort zone 110%. You know, with every move, I can feel that. And yeah, it's it's a good feeling, you know.
It sounds like a wonderful feeling. And I really like your sentiment of like seeing everything as a paper trail, like a really big picture rather than lots of different little worlds. Because I
Yeah.
think it allows you to include the people from different worlds into your current
Yes,
reality, which is
exactly.
nice, rather than being like, you're over there, I'm here, kind of thing,
Yeah.
which is nice. But I wanted to ask, do you have anything that you do to kind of create that sense of home or familiarity when you're feeling homesick? Like here, for me, it's food. Like I really missed my parents, and I went to the market, and I'm Indian, and I got some like Indian food, and I made it at home, and I called my parents while I was making it, and we made it together, and it was really nice, and it really made me feel better. So, do you have anything like that?
That's really sweet. Um, I honestly, for me, it's food as well. Um, but there's something, I wish I had my mom's cooking here so bad. I feel like that's such a big piece of home for me. Um, and you know, I have made some things here that I made at home. Um, but a lot of that also is baking for me. And unfortunately, here I struggle with finding the right ingredients, and then also it's like the right supplies, you know, with with baking. Like I the other week I had went to the grocery store and I got all this stuff. I was like, I'm gonna make chocolate chip cookies, how my mom does, right? I get the things. First of all, it's like, okay, the sticks of butter, they're not sticks here. It's like a block. So okay, so I brought that home. I was like, oh, I actually have no measuring cups here. Obviously at home we're measuring in cups and tablespoons and teaspoons, and here it's like everything really is weight, you know. So I don't have a food scale here. I don't have any measuring cups. Anyway, the recipe, it kind of turned out it was definitely not the same. um was it a cookie? Yes. But was it remotely the same? No. But um so yeah, it's different. But I think just FaceTiming my family, we talk a lot, and that's kind of that's that's what I do when I miss them. When I was in Boston, a lot of it was cooking and baking because you know, I was in the States still and I had access to all those typical ingredients and measurements. But um here I don't really I do have peanut butter though. That's like one thing that is, you know, very similar to home. Um, I mean, there's other things too, but that's just one of my favorite foods. But yeah, I really just think communication for me is what it boils down to the most.
That's communication is very important. What would you say are your key takeaways from living abroad? And what would you say are the key takeaways to someone who, like, if you had a friend who was about to embark on the same journey and like move to a country on the opposite side of the world, what advice would you give them before they leave?
Um, I would definitely say if you don't want to be uncomfortable, do not move. Don't move. But honestly, don't do anything ever in life, right? Everything, if you plan on growing at all in life, you're going to be uncomfortable. You're going to experience discomfort. And that's like, I think that's, what it boils down to. If you don't want to experience that, you shouldn't move abroad. You shouldn't really move anywhere. Um, I think, you know, you kind of need to experience discomfort to grow as well. I don't think anyone, you know, maybe this is maybe this is too broad of me to say, but I've heard someone else say this, like, I've never met an interesting person with an easy life. And it doesn't need to be, I don't think that easy, quote unquote, I'm air quoting, um, is like life getting thrown at you. I think you can place yourself in those scenarios. So, because I would say, growing up, my childhood, I had an easy life, but I think putting yourself into these situations that are uncomfortable cause you to grow, give you tons of stories to tell too, which is fun. Um, but it's not easy. And it's, I think it takes a certain kind of person to challenge themselves. Um, and people do it every day. People, I think something else I would say is you're stronger than you think you are. I think it's okay to look at something and recognize that it's scary and it's daunting and it's, there's fear there, there's discomfort there, and choose that option. I think a lot of people want to choose the easier option, but it's, we can do hard things. We are able to put ourselves in these situations. And you're only going to grow from that. You're only going to get better. You're only going to improve when you're putting yourself in these situations that are uncomfortable. Um, yeah, so I would, embrace the discomfort, get comfortable with the discomfort. And if you're not willing to do that, then moving is not the right step for you. Um, yeah, that's probably not. I wish I could re-say that.
No, no, I think that was really good advice. And I think that that applies to not just moving abroad, but just anything that's new.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree. I agree.
and so that's really cool advice. Although you talked about the importance of discomfort, do you have any recommendations of any resources, communities, websites for anyone who's moving abroad or to Madrid specifically that helped you, that could help them?
Yeah, definitely. Um, I would say first things first, I start with Facebook groups. Um, I know there's a million out there, and there's a lot that probably are not beneficial. However, there's so many that are beneficial. I mean, I will drop the City Life. City Life was super helpful for Madrid, at least. I don't know if City Life is, they have like other, I don't know if that's Madrid specific, is what I'm trying to say. That might be Madrid specific. I don't know. They might have groups like everywhere across Europe in general. Um, but especially for students, I know they're helpful. Obviously, I am not a student, but um, I'm not a college student, I should say, but they helped me with housing. They have workshops you can go to. They have events that you can meet friends. They have everything. They have cooking classes and painting sessions, and they'll help you get your transit card, and they'll help you find roommates and everything. And I'm sure other cities have similar groups. So I would head to Facebook groups for anything. There's also groups like girl groups on there that you will just find, like, solo female travelers in Madrid, or, fill in the blank with any city you want. I'm sure there's a Facebook group for it. I've met friends that way. Um, but I think using social media, it's a huge resource. I did read up on like a few blogs, but for the most part, social media was where I gained the majority of my knowledge for moving.
That's really important. Thank you. And I'm sure everyone listening will be really grateful that you shared that. On the theme of gratitude, I always end the podcast episodes with gratitude. So can you please share with us today what you're most grateful for?
Um, I am most grateful for my family and God for, I mean, I'm quite religious, but um, I think the opportunities that I've had to get here, things that I've been given to get here don't feel like a coincidence. um, yeah, I will leave it at that.
Amazing. Thank you for all of your insights and your stories and anecdotes. It was
Yeah.
such a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Empower Sounds podcast. Stay tuned for next Monday, the season finale. I'm super excited. I hope you enjoy it.